Okay, thanks very much, Ken, and welcome everyone. I'm surprised there's this many people here when the Habs are going to get back in the series tonight, but nonetheless. So to get underway, I'll give you a bit of additional background on my firm and myself. I work for Dillon Consulting Limited, and our company was founded back in 1946. We have about 650 employees at the current time and 17 offices from Vancouver to St. John's. In terms of Nova Scotia roots, they go back to the days of Hugh Porter. Some of you might remember Hugh. He started up a firm called H.J. Porter and Associates in 1975, and we subsequently joined the Dillon group of families in 1985. In terms of waste management experience, we have extensive experience, not just here in HRM and in Nova Scotia, but also across Canada. And again, my name's Scott Kyle, civil engineer, partner with Dillon. 25 years, believe it or not, at the end of this month, since I graduated from Tons, working with Dillon and primarily in the field of solid waste management here in Nova Scotia and across Canada, and in fact a little bit of work down in the Caribbean. The involvement of Dillon with Otter Lake goes back to the very beginning. We were involved in the initial siting and investigation of that particular property. I remember being on a four-wheeler and going through the woods before it was even developed, and we've been involved with it since that time in terms of the engineering and environmental monitoring. So I'll describe briefly Dillon's engagement as it relates to the review of the Stantec document. It was specifically to take a look at the document that was issued by Stantec in January 2013 entitled Waste Resource Strategy Update. And as Ken has pointed out, that review was conducted on behalf of our client, Mirror Nova Scotia, the entity that we've worked for throughout the life of the development of the Otter Lake site. Now, for today's presentation, really consists of three primary parts. I'll start off with a brief background on the events that led up to the call and then the issuing of the Stantec report. For those that aren't familiar with the Otter Lake facility, and there might be a few here that aren't as familiar with it as I am, I'll give a bit of a primer in terms of the overall key attributes and characteristics of the site, how it sits in regard to other communities and its infrastructure. And finally, the meat of the presentation will be the highlights of Dillon's review of the Stantec document. So some background on the Stantec report. Back in July 2012, Halifax Regional Municipality issued a request for proposals, and they were looking for a consultant to conduct really a comprehensive review of HRM's solid waste resource strategy, and it included everything, the system, the programs, the costs, etc. Stantec Consulting were selected through a competitive process to conduct that review, and they issued their findings in a report at the end of January 2013, and it was subsequently posted on the HRM website. Now, just as a point of clarity, and Ken's mentioned this, there was another report commissioned by HRM, and it was to conduct a peer review of the Stantec document, and that was awarded to SNC-Lavalin, and they issued their document in April 2013. So, the presentation focus for today, as I mentioned, is the 2013 Stantec document. It doesn't refer to the SNC document. And my review is based on an initial review of the report and all the supporting documents, both ones referenced and ones that weren't referenced within the Stantec report. I should confirm that I have not had an opportunity to discuss my comments with the authors of the Stantec report. And as mentioned, we have begun an initial review of the SNC-Lavalin peer review, but we won't be going into those initial findings tonight. Okay, now on to the Otter Lake site. So this is an aerial view, courtesy of Google Earth, of the area surrounding the Otter Lake facility. We have Highway 103 just running to the north of the Otter Lake site, connecting the city to the South Shore. Exit 3 and the interchange was actually built originally to provide access to the Otter Lake site, and of course, since it's become a heavily used piece of infrastructure for folks wanting to get into the communities on the north of the highway. Here's the Otter Lake site itself. You can see the developed areas in terms of the completed landfill and active landfill. That makes up the bulk of the footprint. To give you an idea of how large this area is that I'm showing on the figure, from one end of the orange arrow to the other on the scale diagram, that's about 3 miles or 5 kilometers. So the communities, and several of them were represented today and mentioned in terms of the committee. We have Timberlea to the north of Highway 103, Lakeside Beachville, just a little bit off to the east. On the Prospect Road, we have Goodwood, and further to the south, Hatchet Lake. And then finally, up in the southwest corner, we have the community of Hubli. One thing worthwhile pointing out, and I'll talk about it a little bit later with regards to the liner system at the Otter Lake site, we do have the 9 Mile River, a very substantial water course that runs directly to the west of the Otter Lake site. And it ultimately discharges about 10 kilometers away to the salt water in Shad Bay. One item I'd like to point out is how close this waste management facility is to the downtown core of Halifax, and really to the center of generation in terms of where waste is generated within HRM. What you'll often find for municipalities across Canada is they really try, in many cases, to hide away their disposal facility. They try to get it as far away from people as possible because they know about some of those traditional nuisance issues that you have to deal with, and they don't want people to be exposed to them. Well, here we have an instance of a site that's located very close to the city, very close to development, and development that's continued to grow over the last number of years. And because of the facilities that were established there, and I'm really talking about the FEP and the WSF, there was confidence that it could be situated there and be a good neighbor to the surrounding communities, and I think that's quite unique.